Hi, my name is Haley and I am a fourth year middle school language arts teacher in Ohio. And today I'm going to be sharing with you what I do to plan out my lessons, plan out a unit for the school year. So we are currently in September, about the end of September. And I kind of have a better feel for my students, what their ability is, and it's time to start planning more quality content as opposed to just like the basic first day, first week, first month of school activities. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you along with me as I plan for the upcoming month of October. So the first thing that I do when it's time for me to plan is I find a comfortable place to be at. Right now I'm just at my dining room table. A lot of times I will either do this on my sofa watching TV or at my desk at school, but we're at the table for today because it's just a little easier to go over things. Some of the supplies that I like to use for planning, I like to have a good pencil. I love the Papermate Clear Point pencils, and of course it has to be pink, but I always need to make sure that I have a pencil because I make mistakes. There's things I'm going to want to change, and a lot of the process is going to be doing a rough draft of my plan. So having a pencil makes it very easy to kind of move things around without getting too messy. I'm also very particular on how I want my things to look. I want everything to look like nice and neat, and it bugs me if I have to like cross things out and like or draw arrows or even using whiteout. I'm just not a fan of. So a pencil is kind of a good way to start. The next supply that I like to make sure that I have on hand is highlighters. These are just the Pen Gear highlighter. Now these are the scented ones. At first I didn't like the scents, but they've kind of grown on me, except for like, there's one that smells really gross. But anyways, we're not going to use that one. But I do a lot of color coding. So the highlighters kind of help me with the color coding. Another trick you can do is if you like to color code, but you also don't want to do pen, or this is something that you might be doing when you are not around your supplies at home or at school, and you want to jot something down that needs to be color coded, but you don't have that particular colored pen, you can always just use a highlighter and like highlight that in the right color, and it kind of helps keep you organized. But I do always make sure that I have highlighters, and I have 2 shades of pink, 2 shades of purple, and 2 shades of blue. So highlighters help. The last supply that I like to have is, of course, my pens. I do like the Papermate Inkjoy pens, like the ones that click. I have a ton of these and I do like these. However, I got a recent bunch and I don't know why, but they seem to run out super easily, and I never had that before, and it's not like I'm writing a lot more than normal. So I am a little bit limited on my Inkjoy pens, but I also like to use flare pens. And again, I kind of stick to the same color, so I always will have a blue, pink, and a purple. But I also found these flare pens that are so pretty. These are the Flare Metallic pens, and I want to try to kind of incorporate these in my planning some way. I also use my iPad, so I have tried to do digital planning. It's not my favorite, but I do like having the iPad to have my schedule. I do have a lesson planner that I can kind of use as like a rough draft. So I might go through and kind of do a rough draft on my iPad, or I can just use it to look up things, but I do use my iPad. I have my computer, so I will either use, this is my computer, or our school gives us Microsoft Surfaces, and sometimes I'll use that. But after I've planned everything out, I do type up my lessons in Plan Book, and I will show you that later. But I do always make sure I have my computer, either my personal one or my school one, nearby, so I can type my plans up if I want to, or if I need to look something up like a standard or something, it's nice to have that nearby. And I do a lot of rough drafts. One thing that I like is to have a notebook. So this is my 8th grade writing notebook that I use. And as a teacher, you are going to want a copy of your standards. And if you, for whatever reason, don't have standards, you can always look at Common Core to kind of guide you. But I normally will print off a copy of my standards, and my printed off copy is currently at school, but I also go through and I write them down in my notebook that I use. So I use this to kind of help map out my units. So like this is my first unit, and I have written down all the standards that will go with this unit. So this kind of helps me like write things down and kind of get everything laid out and out of my mind onto paper. And that kind of just helps me organize, and then I can look at this as I'm planning for the week. The final thing that I need when planning is my planner. So this is my teacher planner. I love it so much, if you can't tell. This is actually a, what is it? This is actually a planner, the Simplify Teacher Planner. I got this at Target. This is what the cover actually looks like. And I liked it. I wasn't a big fan of the cover. And then I looked on Erin Condren after I purchased this, and I found the Baby Yoda line. And I needed it, but I already bought a planner, and a lot of planners just don't really work for middle school. But I found where you could buy the cover. So I purchased the cover, and then I just attached it to this. It's not a perfect fit, but it works. So in my planner, I do have printouts of blank calendars, which is what I like to use. Again, I like to do lots of rough drafts. I want my planner to look pretty. So I will just print off a calendar of each month, and this kind of helps me map out without making like an actual commitment. But this is what my planner looks like. It comes with stickers, and it has tabs for each month. So each month will have a monthly view. So it looks like this. And then you have a weekly view. So this is what it looks like. And there are spots for 6 classes. There's enough for 6 classes, and I technically have 6 different classes. However, I teach the same thing to all of my classes right now at this point. I have 5 classes of 8th grade and 1 class of 7th grade. So my 8th grade and 7th graders at the moment are all doing the same thing, because we are doing kind of like your basic writing skills. But once we get further into the year, I will probably deviate, and at least they will do different topics. But again, with middle school, I'm not teaching 6 different things. But they just might be at different places at different times. So this is what my planner looks like. So the first step that I do is I will print off a copy of my school's calendar. And I will go through that calendar and write down any important dates in my planner. And I will do this in pen, because a lot of the dates, like no school, field trips, breaks, things like that, do not change. So I will write this in pen. I like to make, again, color coding. What I do is with things that make me happy, like breaks, I will do in pink. If there are due dates, I will do that. And normally I would do red, but I might do purple this time. So I'm just gonna take the time now to go through my school's calendar, put in any extra dates that I might have missed, and I will make sure that I have those. I have a printed copy, but I also pull up on the calendar, and I'll go ahead and put that in my planner. All right, so this is just an overview of what my monthly view looks like. So for example, I have used blue for kind of like important dates that are teacher related. So we have conferences, we have a 2-hour delay, which is a teacher professional development day. So the kids come 2 hours early, we go at normal time. I used more like school dates, so like the end of the quarter, any field trips or anything special going on is in purple. And then I use pink for important days like no school, breaks, things like that. So I went through and I went ahead and put all of the dates in for the upcoming. So after I have all of my dates mapped out, then I actually will start looking at what lessons I need to teach. And this is a question that I had when I first started student teaching. And it probably seems like an obvious question, especially if you're a teacher. So maybe it is, but I don't think anybody really explicitly said it. But I always freaked out when I was student teaching, like, how do you know what to know? And my cooperating teacher, she was like, you just know. And the answer is there are standards. So use the standards. We had looked at standards, but I don't think like anybody sat down with us in grad school and was like, use this as your map. Like, it wasn't explicitly clear. So you want to use your standards. It is a roadmap to knowing what you need to teach. I live in Ohio, so we have Ohio State standards. If you do not live in Ohio, your state probably has standards. So get on the Board of Education's website for the state and see what the standards are. If you don't have state standards, you can always look at the Common Core. And basically, the state standards are pretty much Common Core, just a lot of times they're reworded. I printed off the 8th grade writing portion, especially with language arts. There's a lot of standards that you have to teach. Since I'm writing, I'm focusing on writing right now. But what I did is I looked at all the standards, and you need to teach all the standards before testing, before the end of the year. And I looked at the standards, read through them, and thought, okay, like, what do I want to teach first? Because you can go in the exact order that the standards are printed, or you can kind of work with what's best for you and the student. I printed out Ohio standards, and I ordered them in the way that I want to teach them. This is what my notebook looks like, and the colors don't mean anything for right now, but I just went through and wrote down all of the main standards that I wanted to teach in the order that I wanted to teach them. Now, each standard, like this is writing standard 8.3. Normally the standards will have a big picture main idea, and then there will be like substandards. So there will be like a W 8.3A, B, C, D. I just went ahead and wrote the main standard on the sheet of paper because I will be going through and looking at the individual substandards when it's time to do that. But for example, Ohio has the first writing standard for 8th grade is W 8.1, and it's write arguments to support claims. Now, for me, I want to spend a lot of time on argumentative writing because that is on our state test, and it also takes a while for kids to grasp. There's a lot to go with it. You have to not only come up with an argument, address the argument, you have to address the counterclaim, you have to find support, explain your support, and it's a whole list. So I don't want to start off first day of school like, let's write some arguments. I find for me personally, it's a lot easier to start off with narrative writing. So it's basically storytelling, and you can have them write about themselves or write a story. So this is a little less daunting to have them write a story. So I start with the narrative writing. Then the next standard that I normally teach is the informative and explanatory text. So this is another one that is going to be on the state test. So I do want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's not as in-depth as normally the argumentative is. So this is one where you basically just explain a concept, or you might give information on it. It's not a research paper necessarily, but you're just explaining it. So this is the second standard that I would teach. And then I threw in the W 8.9 standard, which is draw evidence from literary and informational text. So once we practice writing narratives and we start getting to explaining things, then I'm going to start going into how to pick evidence from a text, which will support and help with the arguments to support a claim, because you need evidence to support your argument. So this is a skill that I like to teach before I go into arguments. And after we have done our argumentative essays and assignments, I go into a research project. Now there's really no research project that is on the state test, so that's why I have it towards the end of the year. But normally research project, and that's just a little bit more in depth, but it's also, I like to do at the end of the year because it's a little less stakes. And then the rest of these aren't like necessarily papers, they're just skills that I would implement through these units. So for example, the sixth one I have is W8.6, and that's using technology, including the internet, to produce and publish. We're going to be using technology for all of these standards here. My kids are 1-to-1, so they're going to be using it for their research paper. They're going to be using it to write their papers, for their argument, for their informative, for their narrative. So this is a standard that we're going to revisit pretty much in every unit. For my seventh one is gather relevant information from multiple sources. Again, we're going to meet this with the argumentative, with the research, and probably the informative as well. Eighth, I have produce clear and coherent writing. So this one, they're going to be working on all year long because as they strengthen their writing is going to become clearer and it's going to become more coherent. So that's going to be relevant in all of their writing. 8.5 is with some guidance and support, develop and strengthen writing. This is a year-long standard. They're going to constantly have guidance and support, and their writing's going to get stronger as the year goes on. And then finally, last one is just write routinely over extended time frames. They're going to be writing different amounts of time throughout the year. So these are the main ones, and from looking at this, I have 4 units here. The rest of this are skills that are going to fit into this unit. Now, I'm not just going to jump right into narrative. I do need to make sure that they have the basic grammar and writing skills. So I normally will do sentence writing and paragraph writing and then throw grammar in between these because that is a skill they definitely need to have to strengthen their writing. But those are language skills, which I would include, but this is just focusing on writing. So since my first focus is going to be narrative, I start a page and I label it. So this is Unit 1, Intro to Writing and Narrative Writing. And I took my main standards, so writing narrative to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective techniques, relevant descriptive details, and well-structured event sequences. So this is the overhead standard, and then there are all of these sub-standards. So it goes all the way to E. So I wrote those all down. And if you look at A, it's engage and orient the reader by establishing a context and point of view and introducing a narrator / characters, organize event sequence that unfolds naturally and logically. So they're going to need to do this first before they can start doing dialogue and pacing and use transitions, use precise words, all of that. So after I write it down, I look at each of the sub standards. And this is going to be what my first lesson in the Intro to Writing and Narrative Writing unit. This is going to be the first lesson. So then on a new sheet of paper, I write down that standard, the substandard, and then I'm going to think of everything that needs to be taught, what they need to know about teaching a story. So what knowledge do they need to have that's going to help them engage and orient the reader by establishing a context? What's going to help with point of view, narrator, characters, things like that. So I have these 5 topics, which are typically literature topics. The literature teacher is going to cover them, but especially with language arts, they spiral. So we're going to be visiting this multiple times, literature and in writing. So it's important that they understand plot because they're going to write a story, so they're going to need to write their own plot, understand how to organize the events and the plot diagram so that it makes sense. They need to know how to create a setting, identify the setting to help establish the context. They're going to need to know point of view so their narrator and the characters can speak so they can make sure that their dialogue and what they are writing matches the point of view of either the narrator or the characters. They need to understand conflict because you have to have some sort of conflict in a story. That's a big part of the plot diagram and character development. So then I'm going to break it down day by day. And I'm going to use the first day, we're going to review plot and setting. This will be simple notes. They should know this, especially by 8th grade. So this shouldn't really take much longer than a day. So we'll do a quick review on plot and setting. They will have notes, and then we'll do an activity that they will practice identifying plot and setting through picture books. So for this unit in particular, I'm using picture books for. So they'll look at picture books, they'll identify the plot, do a plot diagram, tell me the setting, and we will also talk about the importance of describing the setting. Instead of just saying, this took place in New York. Like, maybe have your character walk down the busy street and look at the crisp air in New York or something like that. So we'll discuss this. On day 2 is when we will tackle point of view and conflict and character development. Again, they should know this by now. If they weren't 8th grade, if they were 6th grader or younger, I would probably do a day for each one and make sure that they really understood it. But by this point, they should have this down. And again, we're going to continue to use the picture book. So they're going to have to read a picture book, tell me what the point of view is, what's the conflict, and how does the character develop. For day 3, I'm moving on to a new standard. So this is the substandard 8.3b. And this is talking about narrative techniques such as dialogue, pacing, description, reflection, things like that. So this is going to be a little newer for the students. They definitely did not go as in depth with this in the previous years. It's not like plot where they constantly hear about plot. So this is going to take a little bit more time. I decided I'm going to do a picture book project to help them write their own stories, and these are the requirements that I came up with. So they need to have a minimum of 10 pages. There should be a clear description of the setting to show that they understand setting. They need all elements of the plot to be included, clear development of at least one character, clear conflict and resolution, illustrations on every page that reflects the setting and the plot, mechanical usage in grammar, and then effective use of transitions. So all of these make sure that I meet one of the points in each standard. And then after I introduce it, we're going to begin brainstorming. So they're going to think about their setting, their conflict, their resolution, and come up with at least 2 characters. And then after this, I'm going to use this picture book project with each standard. So they will work on a new part of the standard basically each day. So rough draft, they're going to come up with exposition, rising action, climax, continue with the rough draft, finish that plot diagram. So I have this mapped out for about 9 days. So I will say the different units depend on how long they are, but normally like my units are like 2, maybe 3 weeks long. So for this, I have 12 days mapped out for this narrative writing picture book project. So they are going to be writing, doing the rough draft. We're going to do peer review. They're going to have a few work days. They're going to finalize and submit their story on one day. And I do also try to include a buffer day or 2. So I never really know 100% where my kids are going to be. I could have planned too much time and I could have planned too little time. So I try to kind of incorporate a day or 2 as buffer days where they can work on them. They can use them as a catch-up day. If something happens and we don't have school that day, I can then just move my plans forward and everything is accounted for. So I do highly encourage that you do look at adding like a few days at the end of your unit to make up any potential lost time, or if you need to spend maybe more time on an aspect of one of the standards or a project or the unit, you have that built in. And also what I try to do is to create different projects within a unit. So for narrative, they are going to be doing a picture book. They're also going to be retelling an event, and this is where it kind of connects to the literature part because they're going to be using this project, the retelling of an event, with their current book that they are reading in their literature class. So again, I did the same exact thing. I just used a different color this time. I went through, I wrote each substandard. I looked at it. Okay, what are the skills that they need to learn? I broke that down. What activity, what lesson can I do to help them refresh, remember, apply, create, whatever it might be using that skill. And this has been the easiest way for me to do it. And it gives me an idea like, okay, like I can block off 12 days for the picture book project. I can block off 10 days for this retelling of a story project. And that helps me a lot than me just like guessing. So I make sure that I have an enrichment part and a practice part at the end of each unit. So the enrichment will be for the kids who get it and they need to take it to another level, whereas the practice is for kids who might be struggling with it. So for my narrative writing unit for the enrichment part, I have, for the personal narrative project, they can write a personal narrative about one event in their own life. And since I have 8th graders, I went up to the 9-10 standard. Once you get into high school, some of them are combined. So if you're looking for enrichment, you can always look at the grade level above what you are teaching. And whatever the difference is, you can have them start working on that. So this one is about their personal life. And I wrote down different things that they can work on. And then I would do the same thing for the practice. So then there's kind of the guidelines that I came up with for their enrichment. And then here what I would do for the practice. And you could always look at the standards that are below, but I want to try to keep my kids at grade level. So I kind of tried to brainstorm things and concepts that the kids might struggle with. So identify point of view. I might have some extra work that they could use to help practice identifying the point of view or adding clear descriptive or sensory language. So this is something that I always kind of like to have at the end of the unit to help me prepare if I need to enrich a child's learning or if I need them to practice more. So after I have my units kind of figured out as to how many lessons I want, what I want to focus on, I will then start to take that information and put it into a calendar to help me kind of figure out, okay, when do I want to start this lesson or this unit, and how long should this take me? When should I expect to be done? I am a huge rough draft person, so I print off copies of each month, like the monthly calendar. So for this, I will go through and with a red pen, I will mark down any days that we will not have school or that will impact the lesson. So for example, for the month of October, we have a teacher workday and we have no school at the end. We also have a 2-hour delay start for the students. We have a professional development day. So those are days that I'm gonna have to kind of keep in mind that obviously teacher workday and the no school days, like the kids aren't gonna be able to do anything. The 2-hour delay start is going to be a very cramped day. So I don't want to plan anything too hectic. I also want to make sure that I don't start a unit on that day. Look at October. I went ahead and filled out the days. So I have a 2-hour delay start here. There's a teacher workday and then no school. So this is kind of a hectic day. But I know that I'm planning on being done with our paragraph academic writing on the 7th. So I'm going to write that I am ending academic writing unit here. So that's the end of it. And I am going to end the academic writing unit with an essay. I'm basically just going to compare their pre-essay with their post-essay here, which means on the 10th, I am going to go ahead and start our narrative writing unit. Now, this will be an introduction day, and I know that my picture book project, my introduction to narrative writing project, is going to be about 12 days. So if this is our first day, I'm going to go all the way to 12 days, and I'm going to mark the end of it. So this leaves us to the 25th. Now, because I'm going to be teaching writing and grammar, I'm going to make this one color and I'm going to kind of mark it through, and I'm also going to be doing the same thing for my grammar unit. So where the pink is, I know we are working on our narrative writing unit. Now, I also noticed I have this kind of dead day here where we have a teacher work day, we have no school, and then also we have Halloween on this day. So the kids are going to be super crazy, and this isn't a day that I want to start a new project or a new unit on. So this is where I'm going to do a fun activity. Normally around this time, I would do a Halloween-inspired literature escape room. That way, worst case scenario, if I do need to move a day for my narrative unit, I can always do that for here. But if not, then we have a fun activity planned, which means on the 31st, I can go ahead and start our next project. And this will probably just take about a week. So this is what it looks like for October. So I know all of these days are going to be with our narrative writing picture project, also introducing narrative writing in general. I have this kind of flexible day, but if I don't need to use it for something here, then it's going to be a Halloween escape room activity. No school here, and we're going to go ahead and start our next narrative project on the 31st on Monday, which will lead us a nice week for that to be completed in November. So I'm going to be doing the same thing just with the language standards, and I'm going to start kind of mapping out where my language or my grammar unit is going to fall. Okay, so I went through and I added in my grammar unit. So normally I will focus for the parts of speech for about a week. So we'll do basic nouns, common and proper, appositives, and kind of break down nouns for each day. And then we're going to go into verbs, adjectives, and then I'm going to save adverbs. It will probably just be these 2 days. However, the escape room that I have does touch on adverbs in it, so that's why I went ahead and carried it over. So when I look, I know what I'm doing each day with each unit. I have this all mapped out, and I know kind of what I'm doing on what day. I am going to go ahead and start putting this in my So this is typically what my kind of weekly layout would look like. I always start class off with some sort of bell work, and I try to make that bell work connected to the previous day's lesson, and then we go into our lesson, and then there's some sort of practice or activity. Sometimes if the introduction takes way too long, I will just do an activity the next day, but it works out pretty nicely. And I do not put the standards on this sheet, but I can go back to like my reference over here and know which standard I'm meeting with this. So once I go in and make all of my plans, I do go into the website planbook.edu, and I will just type up my plans. I don't have to submit lesson plans, but it's nice to just have them online and in multiple places. I do like that you can type up your plan, and you can also select which standard it meets. So you have the standards there. You can create units, and in those units you can put the standards, and then you can also attach any work or anything that goes along with it. So what I like to do, because we use Microsoft Teams, I will put everything in my plan book, and then I will share that link on Teams. So if the kids are absent, they can just click on that and they can see the plan book for the week, and they can also access any of the handouts. I also like to use it because I do have a co-teacher in 2 of my classes, and I share the lesson plans with her so she can see what we're doing for the day. And she also has that access to any of the handouts. If she needs an extra copy, she can just pull it up and print it. So I do like to have that additional step, and it is nice to kind of have them in 2 different places. So I'm going to go ahead and add my plans into my online plan book. So this is what my plan book looks like, and I'm sorry, it's just plan book, not planbook.edu. I use planbook.edu in my previous school district, so it is just plan book, but go through and you can see. So you can go through, I have the standards listed that go with our unit, and I just have everything already in here, and it's shared and ready to go. All right, so now that everything is like nice and planned out for the upcoming month, I feel a lot better. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Thank you again so much for watching. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future content, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.